Don't you hate pants?
Need this win, you know. We got a lot of losses.
Yeah, we got a lot of losses. That's what we're here for, guys, to win.
Welcome to episode 48 of Giles and the Goalies podcast. Back on location at Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub once again, where I'm pretty sure we have at least tied with podcasting at Reed's compared to our other home, Grumpy's.
It's close.
Although more times than none this year because of our audio problems. We've had to do it from home. But we fixed that, so.
Yes.
But we're back again at Reed's today because we have a guest straight out of the ice-cold press box at the XL Energy Center is a fellow Wild Extra scribe, among other places, Nate Wells. And Nate was covering the NCAA tournament for... Who was it? I looked this up 10 minutes ago.
It's a long list. It's SB Nation College Hockey, the Big Rapids Pioneer. Possibly a couple other people. We'll see. Wait and see how that is.
But just add that to the list of places you've written at. I think you've also been in the Pioneer Press and the Star Tribune at some point covering the Gophers this year. So that's pretty neat. Buy newspapers. We're gonna have a more college-heavy show later on. Try again. We're going to have a more college-heavy show, but before we dive into all that, we're going to hit on the Wild for a few minutes, coming off their huge win in Denver yesterday that puts the Avs on death row here for a playoff spot, which just warms my heart.
Just see how happy Giles is.
But that's also their fifth straight win. They won the entire week last week. So, 5 wins in a row, and I think I saw they won 14 out of 21 under Torch now. So, what are your overall thoughts from the last week?
We talked last week about this team being so painfully inconsistent that it was kind of hard to write about. And here we are again. After you get off the rough week they had where they dropped the week of trap games. They basically fumble almost all of them, with the exception of getting a shootout win against stanky Carolina. And then they turn around and they're world beaters again. And it's just like, I just can't make any sense of anything anymore. Like, it's not quite the same thing as it was last year where you can tell it was a good team, they got a goalie, and then it was a red-hot team for a couple of months. This is still a really inconsistent team, and, hopefully you hope that the inconsistency is gone. You hope that this is what this team is now, that they've figured something out. That Thomas Vanek has figured something out. Maybe hopefully by the same accord Jason Zucker will figure something out. And you just kind of hope that they're just getting hot for this now pretty much inevitable playoff run. But it's not always that easy with this team. So.
No. And when you say, they're up 5 points with 6 games left, and that's, just about a lock to make the playoffs.
Pretty much.
The point system. This team loves to test the impossible, good or bad.
Minnesota sports.
I know, Nate, you were deep in college hockey last few weeks, so do you have any overall assessments of the Wild, or not really?
They've looked good when I've seen them. I haven't been able to watch a few of the games this week because I've been covering college, so I missed the whole Vanek scratch gate or whatever it's called.
Vanek Gate.
Scratch Gate. Yeah.
Scratch Gate 2016.
Yeah.
But if they're finding success on there, it's kind of just felt like at times where they've been a kind of a very streaky team, which every time you get your hopes up enough, it's right when you think they're about to turn around, it's kind of hard just to see them take that next step back. It's been kind of, I don't know, two steps forward, 1 step back, especially since Torchetti has been a coach, which it's kind of crazy to realize that he's been the coach for 20 games.
Yeah.
You talk about once they kind of get your hopes up, they kind of bring it back down to earth. Before you got here, Ben and I were kind of talking about just kind of some playoff scenarios, and we're kind of watching Chicago slip towards perhaps a first-round playoff matchup with Los Angeles, and kind of maybe clearing the way for the Wild to potentially take a run, maybe deeper in the postseason, but that involves them, playing to the level that they can, and
actually
sometimes they like to not, and so there was a brief second where I did actually have some kind of light at the end of a tunnel in terms of hopes, and so probably should bring it back down to earth now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks easy on paper when you think, all they have to do is beat 2 out of the 3 between Dallas and St. Louis and Nashville, if Chicago does, in fact, fall to that wild card spot, which is, not guaranteed. It's very possible.
They're only up 2 on Nashville.
It's very possible, but certainly not guaranteed. But it's like, the Kings look like they're the Kings again after missing the playoffs last year. If this Wild team, if you talk about the window of this team with the veterans that they have, and the fact that Chicago has basically been the roadblock for this team, there you go. There's your silver platter. There's your road to the Western Conference Finals. If LA could somehow do us a solid and take out Chicago in the first round, and then you've just got to deal with Central Division foes for 2 rounds and take your chances after that. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that.
We should just make this a weekly bid. Since we started this last week talking about, I believe I mentioned that this team could just surprise us and just make some insane run to the West Finals or Cup Finals or something, just because that would totally just defy all the odds.
Yeah.
That's almost how Minnesota pro hockey is.
Yeah.
With the 3 big runs have all been on teams that you've never expected. 2 with the North Stars and the Wild in 2003, where they're the 6th or 7th seed for that to get to the Western Conference.
7th, I believe. Yeah.
I think that the 91 North Stars, they had some ridiculous amount of wins, 26 wins or something, and they had a ridiculous amount of ties, and they just kind of backed into the playoffs.
They were in that era where it was right before expansion, and still 16 of the 21 teams made the postseason. So basically, you had to be really bad to miss the postseason in that Norris division, and they were bad, but they weren't really bad.
And then you look at the teams that they beat on the way there, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe looking ahead to the Wild this week, I know they play Chicago on Tuesday.
Yeah. They play Ottawa and Detroit. They play Ottawa at home, and they play in Detroit.
Good thing you read the schedule, because I didn't. the Wild just have some weird success against the Blackhawks. Blackhawks in the regular season the last couple of years and beat them all 4 times this year. And
yeah, you can't expect that to continue. I mean, do you really? I don't know. I mean, it'd be
Chicago's
awesome.
playing bad. It's possible.
That's true. And they're coming off of a Western swing in Canada, or they're playing in Vancouver right now. So, yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like an opportune time to cap off a season sweep of the Blackhawks, which is bananas when you think about it. And then, you got to hope to get some payback on the Senators after the way that whole thing went down a couple weeks ago. And the Red Wings, this team seems to kind of have issues with the Red Wings, but they're not particularly good either. They're fighting for a playoff spot. So it is in Detroit, so that makes it a little tough. But that's a game you gotta kind of hope for maybe a bounce here, a bounce there, and get out of there with 2 points somehow.
Down at the old Joe with just the crazy. There's the weird boards.
Yeah.
I got the chance to go there last year, and that is an interesting place. They built the press box as like an afterthought, so it's just kind of there. I had the instructions I was given, and I'll never forget them because they're just so out there. Like, just go down a far away, and you'll see a door, and then go up a door, and it'll shoot you out. Which is horrible instructions for someone who has never actually been there. So after about 10 minutes of searching, I finally found that door, and I was like, okay, this is basically like going to Narnia. I went up and down stuff.
You were like the guys trying to find Beer Fest, basically.
It was, and the thing was, it started at 1, and I think it ended up with about 6 of us were trying to find it. We were just grabbing people along. We're like, do you know where the press box is?
Pride of reporters.
Yeah.
I think next year at some point, whether it's just to see the Red Wings or maybe go to the Big Ten tournament and be one of the 10 people in the arena in one of those photos. Sure. I'm going to try to get to the Joe next year just to say I've been to the Joe.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I think you should. It's not downtown Detroit's not that bad. I have friends who live out there. I've been out there about 4 or 5 times the last 18 months just traveling for covering hockey. And yeah, it's an old arena. Like, it's more of you don't see those arenas that are built in the 70s anymore because they've all been torn down. So it's kind of weird on that end. But yeah, I think it's kind of one where you might want to see it going up. The new arena is a little outside the downtown. It's good up there. Last time I was there was beginning of this month, and just going by it, a lot of the steelwork's in there, and you can kind of see it finally taking shape.
And yeah, as you said, Ben, the Red Wings I think they're actually on the outside looking in right now in the playoff hunt.
They're neck and neck with the Flyers.
The Flyers are just on fire right now, and so it'll be probably a must-win at least for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably for the Wild, but so you can expect a desperate Detroit team. But just the goal, I guess, again for this week, just win. 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Do what you can, and. But they'll just lose all 3 this week, just because that would be it. Now we're finally getting positive on them. So too much positivity. We'll bring you down a level.
And then immediately they play in Winnipeg too. Early next week, I believe. I don't know if it's Tuesday or not, but yeah, they play in Winnipeg, so it's not it's a mini road trip, and it's not a particularly far one, but those are 2 tough places to play for this team. It seems like no matter how good the other team is, they always play those teams close. So,
gee, I might as well just start writing the article now. Dustin Byfuglien takes run at player X, injures players X.
We're for the playoffs.
Great. I don't know. I guess that could maybe wrap up the Wild discussion, since it seems to be kind of a cut and dry week for games because they won all the games.
That Avalanche game was huge, and that, like we talked about last week, that kind of, really sealed the playoff spot more or less. So we talked about how important that game was. I think everyone knew how important that game was. I don't know, maybe the Avalanche didn't quite know how important that game was based on what we saw, but Patrick Roy certainly knew it was important. He pulled his goalie with 10 minutes left in the game, so he must have thought it was really important because he was doing stuff that is so crazy. It's crazier than we're used to of Patrick Roy. So
yeah, that's like out Raw, like why Patrick Roy. Like I don't. I've seen it once this year in college hockey in the regular season. I've never seen it in the NHL that far along. And it's one thing if you're pulling with 10 minutes left, then maybe it's like game 6 or so, and it's a must-win. You need something to go to kind of get that spark together. But man, 10 minutes to go, like that is. Even if it pulls through, it's an act of desperation.
Right.
Let me ask you guys, because I missed the Colorado game, but I did get to watch the Calgary one. What did you guys kind of think and make of being able to watch Nicholas Backstrom come back here one more time, and just kind of the awkwardness of it being in a Flames jersey?
I didn't get to see it live as it happened. We might, I don't know, we might hit on this at some future point, but I was actually working at the movie theater for the much anticipated release of Batman Superman, which just, anyway. But I did go back
spoilers.
and I haven't seen it yet. But I told him
not to, for the record.
I will give my rant on this podcast when I do. But I did go back and watch, and it was weird watching him play in a Calgary jersey, and we had saw him play the previous Sunday when he started for Montreal, and it was weird. If that is his last NHL start, which it probably could be, that was nice of Calgary to let him have that start here. And
well, what was, and I'm sure you saw in the telecast afterwards, like, he lets up 2 goals right away.
Yeah.
Like, before the first commercial break, which is when they were planning on playing the whole Nicholas Backstrom thank you so very much tribute video at the XL, and it's like, and I think Russo tweeted it, goes, so during the commercial break, they're going to have a very awkward tribute to Nicholas Backstrom now that he's allowed 2 relatively soft Zach Parise goals in the first, 5 minutes of the game. So, I mean, I don't know, I guess it was better off that it turned out like that, where it was like, you'd rather have him just get shellacked than him, break the back of a playoff hopeful team, and then you end up hating him even more than you hate him for his elbow lies. I don't know. I guess it's better off that it happened that way and not the other way around.
Yeah, it was this weird mix of emotions where you're like, I'm glad to see him play. I'm glad to see him get that opportunity after basically spending a year sitting on the bench and not getting that chance. And I almost at that point, I just no, that's fine. I understand that you kind of put the Wild in the cap problem with the pulling a Danny Heatley or whatnot with the injury.
The buyout.
So you can't be bought out. And that was fine. There was no problem with that because you're like, oh, it's great. He's getting that opportunity. Yeah. So it's not the Wild's problem. I get to see him kind of getting a little bit of nostalgia. And then the goal came in 1, and then 2, and then
3.
You basically, honestly, it probably could have been about 8-2 without pressing very much. And you're like, oh, yes, that's why you've been sitting on the bench for a year.
We were reminded of why they weren't playing him.
Yeah.
It was like a very thank you, but this is 2016. So we're very thankful for what you've done. But now we can finally turn the page on this kind of awkward year-and-a-half situation.
Yeah.
I wrote about it on Wild Extra this last week, just kind of looking back at his career and just kind of a eulogy for him. And it just kind of, once he started running into, I think it hit 2010, and basically just his body just quit on him. He just injury after injury. And, it just kind of, maybe we kind of lost sight that before all these injuries and age kicked in, he was a good goaltender.
Well, and part of it was,
I almost said really good, but I didn't want beer come across the table in my New Jersey. So, and to his credit,
he had a decent little window there, and he didn't start playing here until he was 29.
Right.
Could you imagine if he was, a guy drafted as a teenager and actually got a fair shake at pro hockey in North America before age freaking 29? That is something to be be said. I mean, that's something that a lot of people can look up to and a lot of people can shoot for, is that this guy didn't make his NHL debut until he was 29, became an all-star, and obviously, as we well know, got paid pretty well for a couple of years there, and so credit to him for that. I mean, his body broke down, and maybe it would have happened sooner if he got a sooner start, but he was still playing all those years in Finland, so it's not like he was on his couch through his entire mid-20s or anything like that. So you don't want to hate on him too much, but you do have a little bit of what might have been kind of with him, where it's like, had he had a chance at a full NHL career, maybe he would be, even more highly regarded outside of his state.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when when Minnesota signed him, I believe he was the third goalie on the Finland national team that Olympic year. Yeah, I don't know, what do you guys say? Performance-wise, best in Wild history or franchise history?
Well, this is I think we've had debates about this on this. Like, I think, obviously, he is the most accomplished goaltender in the team's history. Holds most major goaltending records and this and that. For most talented goaltender, I don't know if I can say he is, but...
Well, the crazy thing is like, wasn't his game even.
Right.
I mean, his game was so much more being positionally sound. Like, he was never going to fool anybody for, Dominic Hasek or Felix Potvin or something super athletic.
Ben with a Dominic Hasek reference.
I try to squeeze one in whenever I can.
For those playing the Giles and the Gully drinking game.
Yes, no, there are so many things. Third jerseys, what else? Let's see, 90s. But no, I mean, just trying to be objective because everyone knows my stance. I think Rolison was probably the best goalie in Wild history as far as maybe if you're looking at just like a peak standpoint, because he had a really good run here, and not taking anything away from Manny Fernandez and that tandem, but I think Dwayne Rolison was, if you're going to name a franchise goalie for this team, I think it would be him, even though I think Backstrom had a little more longevity with the team and certainly maybe meant more to the team at the time because he was such a workhorse, and Rolison never really had to be because of Manny Fernandez. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you certainly have to give him his respect for being that guy, for being that workhorse. The whole Josh Harding situation was obviously something that nobody anticipated, so that shouldn't reflect poorly on Backstrom. And if anything, maybe it helped him get to a lot of those records.
What's funny about that is Josh Harding was in line to be the backup goaltender on the Wild when they signed Backstrom initially. And obviously Backstrom comes in, pushes him down the depth chart, and then takes the Wild to the playoffs his first year because Fernandez got hurt, and then basically took the starting job.
Yeah.
I do regard Harding as the most talented goaltender in team history.
I would actually agree with that.
And we got a brief glimpse of that in his last season with the team.
Yeah. That was a half season. Unbelievable.
It was ridiculous.
I mean, he led the NHL in save percentage. He had a 1.9 goals allowed, something like that. And he was putting up otherworldly goaltending numbers. So I would agree, and that makes his situation even more tragic, where it's like I literally think he was the most talented goaltender in Wild history, but we saw a whopping half season of him as the regular starter, and that's it. And it's like that's incredibly sad. It's a whole different story unto itself, but incredibly sad.
Yeah, I guess we can switch over to the college ranks. Actually, maybe like a smoother transition. We'll have a Wild recap of signing college kids.
Yeah.
First of all, Wild signing some of their college free agents, and maybe a few more coming down the road here in the next few days. But obviously here in the last couple days, we saw Lucia signed today. Nick Seeler signed yesterday. And then the kid from Michigan Tech.
Alex Peden.
They signed him on I think it was Friday.
Yep.
So I guess, Nate, what are your thoughts on
it's all good. They're finally they're kind of getting those guys as they graduate and complete their 2011 class. I mean, both Sealer and Lucia were picks in that, and they're both kind of big ones in different ways. Where Lucia, they traded up a couple picks to get him. They knew he was a project. We're going to kind of let him develop on his own path. And Sealer was a similar way where they both ended up playing a year of junior hockey, and they both ended up playing in college. Lucia was 4, Sealer was 3 because he transferred schools. But it's kind of that path of, at the time, they were just getting a lot of these guys and letting them develop in college hockey, spend the time when their eligibility expires. It's great to bring in. It's good for depth. Bedan's a free agent signing. He's a top 10 finalist for the Hobie Baker this year. He's kind of ran the gamut on a Michigan Tech team that freshman year struggled a lot. The last 2 years they've been contending for NCAA berths and WCHA championships. Mel Pearson has done a great turnaround with that team and the program. And this year they won the WCHA, but they just missed out on the NCAA tournament. They fell to Ferris State in the Final 5 semi. But he's a good guy. He has some speed. He has a pretty decent shot. I think he's kind of like that quintessential Iowa guy that you want to have that can just do a bit of everything. A little bit like Grayson Downing signing last year.
Yeah.
Which that signing has kind of turned into one of their better minor league deals the last few years, because Downing's had a heck of a year in Iowa after he came back out from injury.
Yeah.
So, I guess just from somebody who kind of follows Iowa, it's kind of exciting to see a fresh crop of kids coming in from college to infuse some new and exciting talent into an Iowa team that's been awful for 3 years.
Yeah, it's kind of been the issue the last couple of years where the players that are a little high-end, top tier, ready to go to the NHL, been in the NHL, and a lot of the players, Minnesota's drafted a lot in the college ranks, so a lot of those guys are upperclassmen in college. This year, even defensively, Sealer's the junior, Richard junior, Susie at Minnesota Duluth, the junior, Johnny Drager at Michigan State's a senior. So all these players who age-wise would fit in with the AHL, and they'd be there if they played Canadian Major Junior or international. They're still all playing big roles for their college teams.
And I think Lucia was kind of a sigh of relief, because as soon as the whole Riley thing went down last year, the way it went, everyone, of course, was just like, oh my God, what if Lucia does that? Not that losing Mario Lucia would cripple this franchise or anything like that, but I think it's just a good thing that I think it was kind of all right, let's get this out of the way. Let's, there's Notre Dame was eliminated on Friday, he signed on Sunday. That's I think that's a great thing for this team, that there's no questions asked. It's not like Riley where it's like, well, maybe he'll go back to the Blue Jackets after deciding not to sign with them. Nope, just kidding.
It's kind of like Nashville. It's going through it with Jimmy Vesey and BC.
Let's sign him too.
It sounds like he might slip away from Nashville.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think you're going to. I think the way it's going to go is Nashville can plug him in right away, and if not, he's just wait until August 15th. So I think if you see him sign the next week or two, it's all good done. He kind of lived up to what he was saying. But if he's still out there, still unsigned, wanting to graduate or finish his semester, it's going to be a little bit of a open end. But Minnesota's had success with those players who, in theory, could use that loophole lately, where Lucia's the one where you could have done it last year if you wanted to after playing a year at juniors. Sealers saw one that could have done it. Eric Halla could have signed with another team after junior, but they've been able to be successful and get these players to sign in with their program and just buy into what's going on.
I just thought of an alternate reality where Eric Halla didn't play for the Wild. And
he would fit really well in the Avalanche.
Thank God I have a new beer coming, because I didn't like that thought at all.
This is kind of funny how just the mention of Eric Halla's name sends like a tingle up Giles' spine, notably from across the table.
And then I guess it sounds like the Wild are probably going to sign Susi from UMD soon, and they might get Lindgren, the goalie from St. Cloud, or that's a hot rumor at least.
Yeah, well, he's been at development camp with them for, I think, 3 years now, or 2 years now.
He was there last year.
I know he's there 2 years in a row.
2 years, yeah.
And I remember watching him this year. I don't know. After
he's been one of the better goalies in out west and everything this year. He's been the class starter for St. Cloud State the past 3, and his season just ended yesterday when Ferris State upset them in overtime. Sent about thousands of Huskies fans home. Very, very sad.
He had a really good season before that last game there against Ferris State.
Yeah, well, he looked great. NCHC.
He won a finalist for the Mike Richter Award. I believe I saw.
If he's not, he was in the long list. I don't remember who were the final 5.
Maybe he was like the top 10.
Yeah, I don't remember who the final 5 are. I want to say he might be in that list.
Because I was going through the Huskies media notes last week.
Yeah.
There was just a whole page of all of his stats and accolades from this year. And
he looked fantastic. When we covered the NCHC last weekend, he looked great. He basically stole that game from Duluth on Saturday night, because Duluth dominated the shots. I think the shots were double, virtually. Duluth had over St. Cloud, and they still ended up winning that game relatively handily. And he made a lot of very impressive acrobatic type, desperation saves. I think he was the story of that game, that championship game for the NCHC. So I'd be excited if they sign him. I don't know that he's an NHL starter in his future, but I think he's fantastic depth at the very least for Iowa, and maybe kind of a dark horse to be a plug and play kind of backup goaltender in the NHL.
Oh, for certain. And Iowa, they kind of need that depth to get someone in there. And trying to think who else is in the prospect pipeline from a goaltending perspective. Doesn't seem like there's
not
too much. Yeah, at this point.
It'll kind of pad the depth chart in the minor leagues for goaltending, which they really need, because Leland Irving has been taking most of the starts for Iowa this year, and before it was Jeremy Smith, who was on loan from Providence. So, that doesn't say too many good things about your minor league goaltending depth chart when you've got, a journeyman goaltender and a guy on loan from another organization.
Yeah.
So that if the Wild can get him, that'll be a nice addition.
Yeah.
And they get the help. Bringing in Sealer will be nice. They had a physical defenseman. He's not very offensive or anything. That's not his game. He goes for the big hits. He tries to just take everyone off their game. He'll block shots. I believe he blocked the 6th most shots in college hockey this season.
Wow.
He's able to just kind of set up plays. And Minnesota doesn't really have like a top 4 pair and everything. They try to kind of even everything out and put everything with in terms of minutes, but I'd say his pairing, if it wasn't the top, it was the top 2, and it's kind of a co-number 1.
Yeah. You say he has grit? Tons of grits.
He's like one of the few players that I've seen that try to go and fail with like multiple hip checks these days.
Try to do the Keith Ballard.
He's not Keith Ballard yet, but he's gone for some big ones. He got suspended in November for a flying elbow, and then he kind of reined it in after that, and his hits were like more in position what it was. I always kind of wonder where sitting out that year, he played 2 seasons in Nebraska, Omaha, and then transferred to Minnesota and sat out a year. I almost wonder if it's just having that year off is kind of just had that pent up energy. I saw him going in practice and tough, and it was tough for him to that was the only thing he had. So it's kind of tough for him to lay off the hits.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to watch Iowa the last couple weeks of the season, and kind of get a first glimpse at these guys. And certainly won't have any scalding hot takes on their play, regardless.
Giles and I were talking about this before you got here. You're not, obviously you don't have your finger on the pulse of Boston College, but what are your feelings on Tuck? Do you think that he leaves after right now? You think that he's ready for it, or one more year maybe? What's your feeling on him? He's certainly the biggest fish they have out there in college. So.
I could see them signing him after this year. The second half he's had, he's one of those players that has kind of turned in the disappointment of being cut from the World Juniors into motivation. Second half of this year, he's been one of their better players. He's scored 2 goals in the first round on a Friday. And he's just been a big leader in that team. I could see them doing it. I could also see him waiting that one more year and just being ready for when he goes in. It's a no doubter that he's going to make NHL time, or when he comes into the season, maybe he needs to start in Iowa. But there's no doubt, kind of like a Mike Riley or an Eric Halla, both of those guys who stayed for 3 seasons, where when he's ready to go, he may need some time in Iowa, but it's going to spend and finish it with the Wild.
Yeah, so what did Riley even end up playing this year in Iowa? 20, 30 games, I think, total?
Yeah, something like that.
So Hall was the same thing.
Yeah. That's one thing, at least covered in Minnesota, that they try to take pride in. They haven't had a player leave after 2 years in about 6 or 7. I think Nicoletti's the last.
Yeah, they kind of had a run where they had guys leaving early.
Poso kind of opened the floodgates.
Before that, Kessel left after a year, and Eric Johnson. I mean, he's the number 1 overall pick, so I still think he's the only number 1 overall pick to play a year in college hockey. But they had that run of a lot of one and done to kind of cut it in. Now they're trying to get guys to stay, the guys who would have stayed for 2 to get that extra year, and so when they're ready to go, they're ready to go. And it paid dividends with Hudson Fasching leaving. He signs. They finish the season on a Saturday. He signs on a Monday or Tuesday, and he scores an NHL goal on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a good week.
That is something I've liked about the Gophers here in last just about decade nearly, is guys hang around for 3 years, it seems like, at least, and
we're not quite the Kentucky of college hockey.
You don't see the one and dones, and that's kind of what I feel. I think maturity wise and size and the way he plays, Tuck could fit in and kind of play well in Iowa. I don't know, and I don't know exactly if there's that spot for him with the Wild next year, which in that case, it's a good decision. I don't know if there's a wrong answer with him.
No.
But it's going to be something to keep an eye on, and at the very least, it's not going to happen. Anyone signed, they made the Frozen Four, so he won't sign for another 2 weeks at the bare minimum.
Yeah, for sure.
And they also have the same thing with Adam Gilmore, who another guy who spent a year in juniors and then spent 3 seasons at Boston College, so he has a loophole as well now.
I guess we can transition to the Gophers, since we were just kind of hitting on them, since they're quite the hot button topic in this town, and
they got Giles a little fired up this week. Let's put it that way.
I had no problem sharing my feelings on them this week, whether it was on the podcast or on Twitter. But I guess, what are your overall thoughts on the program right now? Because it's kind of in a weird place, and I don't know. I have to open the floor for you.
That's a $1,000 question right there. I can start with this year from a writing perspective, and for those who don't know, I cover them for SB Nation and the Star Tribune, the Pioneer Press, and I was one of the couple people who pretty much were with them the entire year. I went to all 6 of the
newspapers.
I went to all 6 of the Big Ten arenas, and I think it pretty much covered almost every game live. But from a writing perspective, this is one of the most entertaining years because it was a team that kind of had to go and find itself. It had lost all its leaders from a senior class, a 6-person senior class, and its top 2 defensemen and its goaltender. So it had 10 freshmen coming in. It had a freshman goaltender that was unproven, and even the juniors were going in there and given new roles, and they're all trying to figure out how to become a captain. One of my favorite conversations of this year was just sitting down with Justin Klus, our captain, and just being blunt and be like, one of the things about hockey is no one tells you how to be a captain. You have to go out and figure that experience out for yourself and find out what kind of captain you are. And it's pretty true. And they kind of did it, and they struggled for a bit, and they found one another. And the year was it was full of highs, full of lows, and some writing. It was just very entertaining on that end. But I can understand, on the other hand, why for a program with ridiculously high expectations to make the NCAA tournament every year, to win national championships, to make the Frozen Four on a regular basis, why it can also be disappointing that for that and everything else that's kind of gone on with college hockey realignment the past few years, just missing that NCAA tournament, there's going to be a lot of vitriol one way or another.
And my thing was, dang it, I said I'm trying to cut down on that.
Don't let Dan get in your head.
Again, drink for that.
I do need to get Dan in here with a shot collar. But no, my big thing with them this year was, in the year we had low expectations.
Yeah.
As you said, they lost a lot of their best players, their leaders from last year. And so we didn't know what to expect from them this year, and they came a period away from winning the Big Ten tournament championship and making it to the NCAA tournament, and that's it's a big crapshoot once you get there.
That was the biggest disappointment, especially with it being here and Minnesota hosting, where just once you get into the tournament, so much can happen, and that's almost, for me, I can see the argument of making the NCAA tournament like every year or 4 or 5 years, which is what they've done. But I'm not a fan of they have to win a national championship or bust, or Frozen Four or bust, just because so much can go wrong. You can be the best team. The last 2 years, Minnesota State, best team in the pairwise, loses to the number 16 seed. Yesterday, St. Cloud State, and honestly, I thought St. Cloud State was the most complete team.
Yep. I would agree with that.
They don't have the best game. They come out a little slow. They come back. One bounce goes away, goes off their pads, puts back in, season over. It's a tournament that it rips your heart out. It's full of big moments, and it's full of big defeats.
And when you're playing one-game playoffs in hockey, there's so much element of chance, and it just makes a chance for a team like Ferris State, who has recently walked into the bar here and is sitting in the opposite dining room watching highlights of themselves cheering.
Oh, is that who that is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They, it just makes for them, or that unfortunate Holy Cross team from a few years ago.
I wrote about that this week because it was the 10-year anniversary. And I didn't think about it at the time, but it was the 10-year anniversary of Holy Cross is also the 20-year anniversary of the Mike Legg lacrosse goal that, as a kid, broke my heart. So, just so you know, that day is a horrible day. Nothing really happened that day to extend the cycle. Actually, it's also the same day, date-wise, that Neil Brodin had the goal in '79 to beat North Dakota. So,
God's bless you, Neil.
Yeah, what was it? It's Thursday. What was that? The 20th? Was that the 24th?
24th.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
But I wrote about this where the big thing about Holy Cross upset was it was the first, and it came against the perfect team at the perfect time, where Minnesota is a very divisive team, win or lose. Minnesota wins a national title, it's expected, and people hate you for it. Minnesota doesn't win a national title, people celebrate. You guys were at the NCHC games this past weekend, and I heard that it was a lot of people in the crowd were very happy once the
Gopher score came in. There was some cheering, and
there was some definite fans on social media.
Then there was me banging my head on the table in the press box.
which is something that for many college hockey teams is not the same thing. So it's kind of perfectly the perfect time where there have been bigger upsets, and there have been kind of more consistently upsets every year since that 2006 tournament has featured a number 1 seed being upset by a number 4 seed. But it's still the perfect one. It's still the gold standard because it was the perfect upset, the perfect time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of another thing when you look at just the NCAA tournament is I don't think people realize this. We kind of briefly hit on this last week, but there's a lot of good teams out there now. It's not, there's still only, 60 college hockey teams?
Yeah, there's 60. Arizona State added D1 hockey this year to put that up to the total.
There's a lot of good teams out there, so that really makes, the NCAA tournament an even more element of chance.
Yeah. Yep.
And it just, I don't know. I'm trying to hold down the fire. Thinking about that.
No,
Gophers.
It doesn't make it easier in Minnesota. Like we're saying, these things are happening. These are all true things that are on the docket. But if you are a Gopher fan, that's still not going to satisfy you that this weekend 16 teams played and Minnesota was done for this year.
It is not good when you don't make the NCAA tournament, especially when you're playing in the Big Ten, which isn't exactly a hotbed for hockey right now.
It's a hotbed for a lot of things.
It's a hotbed for a lot of takes.
A lot of hot takes, but not so much on hockey itself.
Honestly, I believe the Big Ten might be the most hated part of college hockey right now. It's not a team.
Yeah.
It's not players or anything. It's an actual.
It's kind of nice.
It's weird though.
The Gophers aren't the most hated thing in college hockey.
Yeah, no. Oh, when Brad Traviolo, who's the deputy commissioner,
heard about this.
Came out to present Michigan. Michigan didn't get booed.
Yeah, no.
People were okay with that. When his name was announced, they were booed. It was like Bettman. Barry Bettman probably was like watching, flipping through on BTN. It's like, oh God, I feel bad for that guy. That's not it was
when you're getting sympathy from Gary Bettman. That's not good.
Yeah, it was. I think there was only a few things that people made their dollars and their attitudes known about the Big Ten. I think part of it is kind of a college hockey thing. I think with a few things, Wisconsin at this point, and a couple things with Minnesota, where they're not issues with the Big Ten themselves. They're just the timing wise, where
the programs are down a little bit.
It's easy to have one time to skateboard. I don't think Minnesota. This is about Minnesota is what it should be. It's if your worst year is you are battling to make the NCAA playoffs and like about a 5-6 year stretch, that's not bad. That's about what you'd want to be, and that's pretty much what the schools are. It's still going to be disappointing when you don't make it, and it's going to be a nice surprise when you do. But if you're Wisconsin, who everything kind of went where everything built up over a decade kind of built up and crashed at that time, and Michigan was kind of coming close but not figuring out how to get into the NCAA tournament. They finally made it for the first time in 4 years, but the 3 years before that they missed it by one game every year. So they're in that same position Minnesota was in, and then Michigan State historically has been down a little bit, so trying to figure things out. So it's like everything's kind of coming out across at the same time, and at that point it's disappointing. But I feel like the Big Ten does need to learn some things. There's some things they do good. There's some things they really could probably struggle with. They're trying to change the attitude of college hockey from like a regional to a like-minded, and I know it has not gone the way they've liked it, and it's not even close to anything they wanted. It's still a very regional sport.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Big Ten is fully the issue with college hockey. I think it's sometimes it's an easy scapegoat to be made.
Yeah, no, and that's probably more true. And like you said, it doesn't help that there's some historic programs that are down a little bit right now, and it's like nobody's. I mean, Michigan was the only team to make the tournament, and they had a good season, but I don't think they were fooling anybody for a title contender. Really, I mean, they were a good team, but they had their weaknesses definitely.
They were if you've never seen Michigan play, just imagine the 1980s Edmonton Oilers. They're the most entertaining team to watch because they are all offense and it is nuts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, their defense has kind of struggled, which it kind of worked out in the Big Ten. Just because it's a league that several other teams do a lot of that's the other thing with the Big Ten. If you're going to be honest, it's a lot of very entertaining hockey.
Yeah.
Not for the right reasons, but it's a lot of entertaining hockey. And in Michigan, they aren't a bad team. I believe they were 6th or 7th or so.
Final pairwise,
the final pairwise. That's about where they should have been. And I thought Minnesota finished probably about a couple spots out, and that's about where they should have been. You change a couple wins here into losses. You change a couple losses into wins. You could do that with about any other team in that spot. If they came together a little earlier, it'd be a different story. But just at the end of the day, what hurt Minnesota was they played a lot of strong teams and just they didn't come away with wins. They were 5-10 in non-conference. So by the time they figured things out, they lost too many comparisons. And that's at the end of the day, they lost comparisons with 3 Minnesota teams, and
that's how it goes.
Hurt them.
Do you have any hot Don Lucia takes to fire off on the podcast? Since he's kind of at the center of the Gophers Twitter, whatever you call it.
I think there are things that he can do better, and I think there are things that he gets blamed with just for the sake of. It's easy to blame. It's easy to blame Lucia. It's easy to blame the program for not being what they are, and they've had recruiting misses. There are people who don't like Lucia, both from an alum fan base and from just in general. I think Star Tribune had a nice little poll going out for entertainment purposes, and it was like 60% wanted to go. And I honestly kind of feel like that's kind of just the way it'd be regardless.
That's just the comment section of the Strib coming to life is what that is. It's not like there's a lot of rational people there.
I think the biggest thing right now with the team is just you knew it was kind of going to be rebuilding. I don't think the expectations were fully met, and kind of bringing in who they did. It's not the biggest, it's not the best Minnesota group crop. If you're going to still be the Pride on Ice and almost get all Minnesota kids, but there were a couple of big names that they did miss on this year that would have been a big help. That went to other programs, both defensively and on offense. They had 2 chances of Brock Besser, and they were able to land him. He lit it up in North Dakota.
Yeah, he looked incredible.
And it's still some things where there's some. I think there's some highs and lows with the recruiting cycles. It's a little better than else. I don't think that he should be given his free rein for his past success, but I don't think things are as dire and dreary as some would like to make it out to be. So at that point, I kind of feel like it kind of is like where it is about right. Just it's not taking anything too highly out of context or not taking anything else on that.
There's you can kind of look back at his tenure and you can go, there's been some definite misses on big prospects, but you're probably going to have that with maybe a few of the other big college hockey programs.
That's
just
true.
You're going to have those.
No, and like the number of teams that the way they performed the last decade or so, or the past 5 years, there are very few that you put in there, and it's kind of weird that we're 2 years ago, national championship game with a team that you really weren't expecting to play that well that year, and they did. That's not good enough. Or 2 Frozen Fours in 5 years, 5 conference regular seasons. I know people aren't big on the Big Ten, but you know what? They won that champion. They won it.
They did what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, they did it this year. It's so in that sense, it's kind of weird, and I understand where people are coming from, but I don't think it's not as bad as people want to make it out. But there is room to grow.
Yeah,
I will give that enough.
Right. And I think, next year, obviously, you're going to have a relatively similar team coming back, and sans a few guys that were signed here in the last week. But, expect, team to take a step forward next year and hopefully get back into the NCAA tournament. I think that's a fair expectation. But as I kind of went irate about, I just expecting them to win the national championship every year at this point with just all the good teams in college hockey and just the element of chance in the tournament, the way it's set up, that's just not feasible.
No, you're not going to see any like Alabama dynasties or just going back to like the 90s and the 80s where it's the same few teams.
When even I was watching the Ferris State-Denver game today, they referenced Denver winning the back-to-backs in 04-05, and the Gophers to do that right before them in 02 and 03, and you're really not going to see that.
Yeah, no one's done it since.
Really at all anymore. And if you do, that's incredible.
Yeah. And the 2 years before that, it was North Dakota and BC trading wins, going in the championship. Yeah, no, at this point, it's almost just hard to get back into the tournament after winning a national championship. BC has kind of struggled a couple times. It kind of feels like they're on an every other year cycle. Union lost a bunch of guys and they didn't make it back. Providence made it in this past year, but yeah, like it's very hard to repeat in college hockey. It's a very tough tournament to win in general. For how you're doing it, the regular season, it's almost just a season-long invitation to give yourself a chair, a chip, and a chance.
Yeah. That's really all you can do. Just get in the tournament and see what happens. So hopefully better times ahead for the Gophers. I don't know. I'll just say this. I think again, I don't know. You have to remind me on what I say because I don't remember what I say.
My favorite part is last
what
week.
I say, Giles Farrell.
When you forgot all about telling your story about your Paul Correa jersey, and you're like, "Oh, I forgot to mention that." I'm like, "No, you totally did." And you're like, "Oh, well, good."
I guess I don't know. Now I just forgot where I was going with that.
Also, a Giles trademark being completely derailed by interruptions.
Somewhere someone has bingo right now.
Yeah, they have that.
I went from drinking game to bingo, but that's where we're going.
Well, whatever. You can do both.
Oh, I remember. Just my last thought on the Gophers is, I said last week I wouldn't be disappointed if Lucia comes back. And, I know somebody told me he had a year left on his contract. Is that right?
He does. They're going to talk extension and everything and figure it out because you don't usually see too often coaches go in their last year of the contract.
Right. And,
with the new AD,
that's a difficult. That's what makes it difficult.
That's the whole wrench in it.
There's no athletic director right now.
Right.
Yeah, there's nobody in charge, and it's taken them 7 months to just set up the committee to get somebody in charge. So
that can only go well. So we got North Dakota, Denver, BC, and Quinnipiac.
Yeah.
In the Frozen Four.
That's the Frozen Fours. We just watched Quinnipiac defeat.
Giles and I were
UMass.
smart enough to pick St. Cloud State to win it all.
Well,
and that turned out very well for us.
As Nate said before, I had the similar thought. I thought they were a very complete team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Front to back, they looked very good, and I liked their mindset coming out of the NCHC tournament.
Yep.
But of course, because I made a bracket and tweeted it for public view, it incredibly backfired on me.
I got 3 of of the 4 teams in the Frozen Four.
Yeah.
The only one I did not was I had Michigan over North Dakota.
Yeah, I did too.
And I thought that'd be. I don't know. Like I kind of just felt it was going to be a good offensive-defensive battle, which ended up being the case. But I kind of thought that maybe Michigan, their checking line was going to be able to cancel out the Kajula, Besser, Schmaltz line, and they kind of did. But credit to North Dakota, I wouldn't have been surprised. That was the one I was wishy-washy and going the back on.
That was definitely a coin flip type matchup right there. I thought too.
But I thought I had Denver over St. Cloud. I had BC over Duluth, which I called both. I called that upset because I thought Duluth was going to pull it off. They're a very good team at times this year, and I've been shocked to see them in the Frozen Four. But Worcester, where they played, has been Boston College's home. I think they made the Frozen Four the last 6 times they played there.
They showed it last night. It's ridiculous when they play in Worcester. They basically go to the Frozen Four every time.
Well, somebody on Twitter this last week sent me a link on just kind of a weird trend lately in the NCAA tournament where teams that have to travel incredibly a lot less tend to do better in at least the regional part of the tournament.
Except St. Cloud State.
That also factored into my St. Cloud State pick.
No, it would not have been a bad pick at all.
No.
I wouldn't blame you. No, the reason I went Denver was because besides the Frozen Face-Off, which you guys saw, they were the hottest team in college hockey.
Yeah.
And they're 13-1-1 their last 15 games. So I was kind of going with the hot hand there.
And they have a line called the Pacific Rim line, which is pretty awesome.
All 3 of those guys scored today. It's great because you put the names together, you can totally get the DDT line. No, they went Pacific Rim.
That is way, but no, I understand that.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's been a good year in college hockey for names of different lines. I mentioned North Dakota had the CBS line, which is great because the NCHC plays on CBS.
Makes sense.
Michigan had the CCM line of Kyle Connor, JT Comfer, and Tyler Mott, and that line is one of the best I've seen in college hockey. It gives that Johnny Gaudreau line from BC a few years ago. It's a good run for its money.
Scott Sandelin mentioned this that they didn't think they had a good acronym line, and then they figured out they had the KFC line, and they were pretty excited about that at the NCHC tournament. I was like, that is kind of awesome. Yeah.
At this point, you're just like, coach is like, all right, let's see. Guys get together.
We got here
come up with something good.
Something. Makes sense.
I feel like that almost has to be like your sports information director's job. All right. These guys are going to play well together. Come up with something good.
Your PR people aren't doing their job if you don't have a good acronym or abbreviation type line.
Yeah, just watching the tournament here the last couple of days, it's been a very good competitive tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an awesome game.
Some very good games, and I don't know. I don't think I can drive this point across enough that there's a lot of good teams in college hockey, and it has its issues, no doubt, as we see in the attendance pictures constantly getting tweeted out. But that doesn't,
Thanks, Nate.
We just kind of forget the fact that there's really good hockey being played.
Yeah, there's a lot of good hockey being played. Yeah, so with this tournament, I think there's 2 games, maybe just one, that haven't been decided,
coming down the wire.
In the third period. Like Ferris State won 6-3. Ferris State lost 6-3 today to Denver. Sorry, Bulldogs, you did not win.
But that all came in the last 5 minutes.
But it was those 3 goals came in the last 5 minutes. It was a 3-3 game with 5 minutes left to play.
Yeah, the games that I've seen have been fantastic. I watched both the UMD games, and they were both terrific. So it's really good hockey, despite the attendance.
Yeah, and that also goes back to Minnesota, where they played a ton of close games.
Yeah,
they had 7 overtime games, and they all ended. They didn't go to shootout once. It's kind of weird. I've covered 9 or 10 games this year. I've gone to overtime, and I've not seen a shootout, which honestly I'll take. I'm not a big shootout fan.
The Wild are 3 out of 4 in shootouts right now, something like that.
They finally hit a
They
stretch.
keep losing, and they lost in
3.
Yeah,
I think it's the fewest in the league, or one of the fewest.
But they've won most of them. They won 2 out of 3, right?
Yeah, they went back to back on them.
And they couldn't seem to win an actual 3-on-3 overtime. But if it gets to a shootout, they're more successful. don't get whatever.
No, Nate has the best stance when it comes to Twitter and shootouts. Is don't live tweet.
Don't let friends live tweet
it's the
shootouts.
Most pointless thing to live tweet because at the end, all you're going to say is team won a shootout. There you go. You get the extra point.
Well,
but like also like if you read a shootout live tweet, it's like Koivu stopped by Lundqvist. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
It could have been an amazing save. He could have lost the puck.
I'll make comments on fantastic saves or fantastic moves.
Well, like that's it. But
that's it.
So it's like Minnesota scored, New York.
Right. Like
New York was saved.
I'm not tweeting out like Charlie Coyle ripped a shot wide of the net in the shootout. Like I'm just not going to bother.
There's no context. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too when I cover games, if you're following along on Twitter and you're the beat writer, you'll say it before it actually shows up on TV.
I suppose.
But it doesn't really add anything. So I'm just like, you know what? I came to it last year where I was just like, I am not going to live tweet a shootout. I will tell you, and especially in college hockey where it doesn't mean anything. It's officially a tie, and I have to spend 3 sentences explaining that.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say team won a shootout, earning the extra conference point. That's all you need to know. Maybe if there's a little controversy or what happened, I can give you a little bit of detail there. But there's no point to live tweet it because it doesn't add anything to the overallness, and that's kind of where I was going with the friends don't let friends live tweet shootout.
I agree.
The other thing I really hate about the live tweeting of the shootouts is like whether it's the Wild Twitter account or Russo, Graf,
they all do it.
Is I get the notification sent to my phone, and they're so quick on the typing of this that there's a 5-second delay on the television. Yeah. So they have the tweet sent, and I see it before it happens on my television. So it is spoiling what's happening. So I have to just turn everything off for the shootout. Yeah. Which I don't really tweet anything during a shootout anyway. I just kind of, unless there's like a ridiculous goal.
Right, exactly. Which makes sense because that's what you tweet during the games. You don't tweet like face off won by Mikko Koivu. Like you don't do that during the game. So why would you do that during?
Or I'll make a crack at here comes the Koivu forehand backhand.
They'll never see it coming. It's like the Mariano Rivera shootouts.
One man, one move.
They got one move, but somehow no one knows how to stop it. But that's exactly it. Where it's all stuff that you'll put up in a box score. Like, why clog it? It's.
I don't know. Yeah. I like that stance. Let's all get behind that stance.
I think we should get
as soon as we get the Big Omelet nickname to catch on.
I know.
We're gonna get that stance on shootouts.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
I feel like we've done other things though, like have caught on or with like official
maybe
stuff.
I don't know. I don't know. I was just thinking about this the other day. Actually, I don't know if I was the one or not that necessarily dubbed Joel Eriksson Ek Easy E. I remember tweeting it out almost immediately, and I don't know if it was me or one of the Hockey Wilderness guys, or if we all just kind of came to a consensus on it right away. But I think that's stuck, and I don't know if maybe I'll have to go back somehow, and there's no way for me to actually look if I was the first, but I would like to take credit for that.
I don't tweet at players at all, but I did tweet at him that you missed a slam dunk golden opportunity by not making some kind of Yuletide reference around Christmas time in your Twitter name.
That's dad joke pun level, though. Like, that's...
Yeah. I went to the Daniel Mick School of Puns. What do you want from me?
You don't tweet make-up lines at hockey players, Giles. That's not how make-up lines work.
That's my favorite
It's
thing.
a bad idea.
Is he trying to go get hired by NHL.com and puns like that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Man,
let's not get started on NHL.com around here. Let's not go there.
That's for a different time. I'm not happy with their site overhaul.
No, who is?
We can do our last trademark segment.
Sure, yeah. Let's nail it down here.
The jersey of the week is Ottawa.
Yeah.
Since
they play them
that's
this
what the
week.
Wild have, and it's for a Canadian team. That's kind of an underwhelming history of jerseys.
Yeah. Well, they're a relatively new team too, so
But still, I guess
The thing with them is that they went from the super boring Trojan helmet type thing look to the sneering type look, and it's just kind of none of it's really done much for me,
Just full on Reebok edge.
In fairness, they might have been one of the few teams to avoid the '90s ugliness, that late '90s.
Yeah, they didn't
Because they were
have
still new enough. Yeah,
they didn't do a gross third jersey in the '90s.
That cut on about 15 years too late with their Super Nintendo jersey.
Yes.
By the way, that O with the barbershop ones, I love that one.
Really?
Yeah, I know they're love or hate, but
The throwbacks?
yeah, the throwbacks are.
I was going to say that's their best jersey.
Those are their best jerseys. If you put those as a regular one,
it's tough for me to pick with them. I don't really have anything that I don't particularly like those all that much. I don't particularly like anything else they've worn all that much. I do absolutely despise the Sens jerseys because it's just it's just like this. It's so, and then the hilarity of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System just going on that just makes it funny and therefore not a jersey that you can own because it's just like a walking joke.
Now that I have the Ovechkin jersey, I can set my sights on my next jersey. Maybe that's the Carlson third jersey for Ottawa, the throwback.
Yeah.
Those it's tough to get those striped jerseys to work well, but man, those ones are
they look good.
When you do them right, they do them right. There's a Detroit one they did 1 year, and I want to say it's 91, 92 for their 75th anniversary, where it's barbershop stripe and it's Detroit.
Yep, I remember that.
White.
Yep.
And that one is another one of those where it works really well, but when you do it wrong, you get the Montreal Canadiens barbershop hole.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look that up on the fly because
it's really good. A buddy of mine has that jersey. It's a Stevie Yzerman, and it just looks really good. Yeah.
I feel like I had a hockey card of maybe Lidstrom in that, or one of those guys in that.
It was the one time they had a third jersey other than the Winter Classic.
Yeah.
I was going to say on Ottawa, they did not the Heritage Classic a few years ago, and their jersey for that was just the white opposite of their regular throwbacks now. If they went to that, I wouldn't be disappointed. But
was that the one where Calgary had the Ronald McDonald sweaters?
I think they played Vancouver in that.
Okay, you're right. Well,
because they had that was a weird look for Vancouver, though.
What did they wear? They wear the one with the putter in the sea. Did they wear that?
Yeah, it was no. They had it was the old maroon or million. It was the old Vancouver Maroons or something.
No, that's not.
Or whatever.
All I remember from that game was Luongo didn't even get to start. Torts benched him, and that was pretty much it for Luongo in Vancouver.
It was also an indoor game that was, or it was an outdoor game that was indoor because they did it at BC Place, and it was raining because it's Vancouver and it rains a bunch.
Yeah.
So they had the roof closed, but they still had it'd be like if they held the game at the Metrodome.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah.
My brain just had a meltdown thinking about playing a hockey game in the Metrodome.
What about playing a hockey game in the new Viking Stadium?
Burn it all down.
You can't see the steam coming out of Giles' ears, but trust me, there's steam coming out of Giles' ears.
College hockey did a Frozen Four at Ford Field 6 years ago, and they're like, "Oh, we'll break attendance records and we'll make it 40,000 or so." And it was about as bad as you'd expect.
Oh, yeah.
Just with the ice and everything. And that's what I would imagine how the outdoor game at whatever U.S. Bank Stadium is. Especially because this is the one time, it took Minnesota so long to get an outdoor game because there was no outdoor venue for years. Why would you put it indoors? You have TCF, you have Target Field.
Yeah.
You know what? If you want to get creative, there are plenty of places you can put it. Why put it in the Viking Stadium?
If the Wild get another outdoor game, which it's not happening for a long time.
No.
It'll probably be at Target Field.
Yeah, maybe. I can see that.
I guess I don't know. Any other final thoughts on the Ottawa jersey history, or
no?
It's just
I like a lot of the Canadian teams' jerseys. I'm not really like we talked about Vancouver's and the goofy stuff they've had going on, but for the most part, I really like the Canadian teams and how they haven't really messed with some pretty good looks overall. But for some reason, Ottawa is just kind of like that stereotypical boring Canadian for me. Like, it's just kind of like they've got, even with like the whole, like I said, like the whole helmeted warrior thing, like they can't even really make that snazzy. Like there's just, it's just nothing for me. Like it's a whole lot of yawn, I guess, is the final thought for me on that.
Not really jersey related, but Ottawa was also kind of toppled this last week. Their owner, Eugene Melnick, I think I'm saying that right.
Sure.
He kind of came out and blasted the team for underperforming this year and this and that. And Ottawa's one of probably the most cash-strapped team in the league. And no, that's not how I put it. They're the most budget team in the league, I guess is how I should say it.
Sure.
And so he blasts the team for not being good and said nobody is safe and this and that. And I saw some people kind of go, well, maybe they should try having an analytics department. And then he made some insane comparison to horse racing analytics.
Oh, my God.
So I think we see where the problems with that organization run from.
Yeah, well.
So, yeah.
If you're likening anything to building a hockey team to horse racing, I think that there's probably a fundamental problem there.
I know they're trying to get a new stadium deal in the works for something closer to downtown in Ottawa. That's not going very far.
Yeah, they are. They're like 25, 30 miles outside of like downtown Ottawa.
There is a reason why they're cash strapped.
It's a market that's between Toronto and Montreal, so it's kind of a difficult area, but
you don't really hear much from Ottawa. They're probably at least to me, they're kind of the least covered Canadian team. And, they have
probably deservedly so.
Carlson, who's having an insane season.
Yeah.
But unless the Hamburglers making some insane run to the playoffs, you don't really hear much out of them. Or unless there's a equipment truck fire.
R.I.P. Minnesota Wild equipment.
Unless they burn down an entire.
What was that? Is that like 5 years or so?
That was like, I want to say it was like 2011 or something like that.
That's great. That was one of the weird stories of like Minnesota Wild hockey. And like for a franchise that's 15, 16 years old, there's been a lot of weird stories. I think that one might take the cake.
They're just playing with all this weird equipment that came in from different places, and the poor equipment guys were making flights to and from Ottawa and Minnesota nonstop to try and get the right stuff there. That was a weird thing, and it's not a trip out to Ottawa unless the beat writers
mention it,
make a crack to the equipment truck fire.
And if you're new enough and you kind of follow the Wild at that point, basically their equipment shed went up in flames. They lost so much equipment right before the game in Ottawa. So
just Google Minnesota Wild equipment truck fire.
They ended up playing a game with like a lot of mismatched equipment and everything. It's kind of a miracle that they ended up playing.
And I think they did not play well by any stretch of the imagination, if I remember right. So,
as you might imagine.
I think
I'll be doing
just about do it. Any I guess maybe final thoughts? Or
well, I mean, getting back to the Wild, it's weird. Like it's becoming real that this is a playoff team. despite this team's worst efforts, this team is a playoff team. Like it's sinking in now, and we have to kind of start dealing with the reality of that. And so hopefully all goes well in the next 2 weeks here, and they can stick with it and not crap the bed and become even more memorable than they already would be this season. But I guess it's just adjusting to that after the big win on Saturday, where it's like, this team is going to be a playoff team, and now we start looking ahead to matchups, and that's kind of crazy. Like, it's crazy to me. It'd be crazy to me 2 weeks ago, let alone mid-February when Mike Yeo loses his job. So, that's my thing. It's a weird sensation. It's obviously very different than last year, but somehow the same. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I keep trying to figure out if how they're playing right now is just if it's how they are, if it's just kind of just another weird trend, and that'll just phase it. I don't know. They could just easily get swept in 4 games in the playoffs, or they could make some ridiculous run to a round 3 or beyond. I don't know. You can't figure them out. It's just trying to put your finger on the team is not easy. So it's.
Oh, you're right.
That's why it's in the last couple weeks, and last month really, watching high school or college hockey. It's been kind of refreshing to just get out of that team for just a little bit and watch other hockey and see other things. And now that high school's done and college is down to the Frozen Four, and they'll be done soon. So it's quickly back to all wild for hockey.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I suppose.
Any lasting thoughts, Nate?
I'd love to see how the state responds to a Minnesota-Dallas playoff series if that happens.
Yikes.
I think odds-wise, that's what the favorite is.
It is. It's actually around 50%.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what the reaction would be if that happens. Second thing, watch out for Jordan Greenway in the future. I got a chance to talk with him this weekend. He's a BU freshman. He was the second-round pick of the Minnesota Wild this year. He's still kind of putting things together, but you can see at times why Wild scouts are very, very high on him. And we talked a lot about prospects before this, but he's kind of a guy to keep an eye on going into next year.
Man-child.
Yeah. He's 6'5", 225 pounds, and he's the only person I think I've met that were like, you could put on another 20 pounds and it'd be fine. And then you think about it, and you're like, you are already bigger than about 90% of the population, 95% of it. So,
especially in hockey, yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, that should just about do it for us. Shout out to everybody who listened to the podcast last week.
Yes. Thank
weirdly,
you.
One of our highest rated episodes. We didn't have a guest on or anything, and it even beat out the All-Star Meltdown, which had a ridiculous All-Star cast. So
just you and me, BSing after a game beats out the famous John Bonus being a guest on our podcast.
Me after Seven Molson.
By the way,
forgetting what stories you're telling.
You could kind of just, the most entertaining part was Giles, like the slow decline of Giles. I could kind of count and figure out by the guest how many drinks that you've had. By the end of it, you were just it was like, yep, you're good. I think it was Tom was the last one or something. It was just like,
and I went back and I listened to a few minutes of that just to clear some things I said, and I was just kind of like, what? I don't know. I don't do that a lot, but
we've probably said worse.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I should clarify. I don't go back and listen to the podcast a lot.
Right,
But I had to go back and listen to a few things that I was told I supposedly said, which I did.
So basically, if you've made it through the hour 20 minutes of this podcast, go back and listen to that one too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks for everybody listening again. We'll be back next week for another show somewhere. Who knows?
Somehow, somewhere. Yeah.
We'll
talk about the Wild 3-game losing streak, of course.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk about how they beat Chicago and then just crap the bed against Ottawa and Detroit.
Yeah, probably. God.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show with our new audio equipment. We're sounding good.
Yes.
So if you like the show, tell your friends. Actually, I did a survey for the Wild this last week, on feedback. So maybe I'll find the time to create one for this podcast. Tell us what you like and what you don't like.
Maybe I'll put up a poll on the articles page. Maybe we'll see what we can get going from there.
Or just put in the comments. Tell
There's
us
a
what
Wild
you like,
Extra
what you don't like,
and answer our poll question.
We will be back next week, and hopefully it's after another few wins. But we'll see you next week.
I'll wave my private parts at your aunties, you cheesy lot of second-hand electric donkey-bottom biters!
One more time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright, don't stop the dancing. One more time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright, don't stop the dancing. One more time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright, don't stop the dancing. One more time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, one more time. Celebration tonight.